Okay.
All right. So welcome everybody. My name is Peter Alessandria. I'm located in northern New Jersey, a couple of miles from New York City, and I am what I guess what you call a seeker. I'm not an experiencer. I haven't had a near-death experience. I haven't had any. I've had a couple of what I would consider minor spiritually transformative experiences. But for me, I've just been on a journey for 35 years to find out answers to the bigger questions. Like, who are we? How did we get here? Where are we going when this is all over? Right? And what the hell is really going on? So, I have a long journey. I'll spare you all the details, but in 2019, two things happened. First thing is my dad passed, and he had been ill for a long time, but it was still the first major loss that I had in my life, other than some grandparents. And it was tough. It was very sad. I was recovering actually from an injury, so I really wasn't able to get around very well. But that when he passed, it just really stopped me again, to ask these questions like, what is really going on here? I was familiar with the near-death experiences. I've been studying spirituality informally for like 35 years. So that was the first thing that happened that year. And then the other thing that happened was I read a novel called Adventures in the Afterlife. And when I read that novel, again, it just sparked something inside of me. Even though it was written as a novel, it seemed to hold a lot of truth. And I actually ended up reaching out to the author, a guy named William Buhlman. Some of you may know him. He used to be an instructor at the Monroe Institute. And William, even though it was written as a novel, it was based on his actual out-of-body experiences going into the astral and other dimensions of the afterlife, of higher realms, whatever you want to call it. So when I read that book, it really got me thinking. And what I ended up doing was optioning the book from the author to turn it into a film. So I'm now working. I've been a professional photographer and filmmaker for almost 15 years. And so I optioned the book and I started writing the screenplay. And as part of the research for the screenplay, I started watching a lot of YouTube videos with near-death experiencers. And then the pandemic hit, and we were all home watching whatever we were watching on our computers, our phones. And at some point in the process, I started reaching out to some of the people that I had seen in these YouTube videos. And I started up relationships, I started up dialogues with these people. And at some point in that process, it hit me, and I had finished a screenplay at that point, but I couldn't get anybody to read it. And I recognized that I just needed to step away from it. And I started reaching out to some of these people, as I said, that I had seen in the YouTube videos. And at a certain point, it just hit me that I have to do a documentary about the near-death experience. But it was more than just a near-death experience. It was really about who we are. Who are we really? What are we? Who are we? And what can we learn from those experiences to make our lives better while we still think we're here in these bodies? So I started reaching out to people, and to my surprise, they said yes. I knew I didn't want to do webcams. I wanted to do more of a traditional documentary style film, which meant I had to be in the same room with these people. And I started conducting interviews. This was about 2.5 years ago. To date, I've interviewed over 60 people. Many of them are near-death experiencers. Some you know, some you don't know. The rest are psychics, channels, and mediums. And this whole process has really changed my life, quite honestly. Certainly, it answered a lot of my questions. The way I started the film was I had this list of 38 questions, such as, what is the soul? What's the soul's relation to source slash God? Do we have contracts? Are there contracts or agreements between souls? Do we have spirit guides? Do we have angels, guardian angels that watch over us? What is karma? All these questions. And what I did was with the first 40 people that I interviewed, I didn't let any of them tell their stories. I was very cautious or very conscious of not sensationalizing the death experience. So I had a lot of great NDEers, and I didn't let any of them tell their story. Instead, I asked them these questions. And then about a year and a half ago, I realized, there is value in telling the story, and we can avoid, sensationalizing the car accident or the botched surgery, or whatever it was that took them out. And so I went back and interviewed, a bunch of people who had near-death experiences or other spiritually transformative experiences. And I now have a project that's close to, I have about 5 hours of content. I think it's going to be some kind of a series, maybe a three-part series or something like that. I'm actually still working on it, have some editing to do. I'm going to the IONS conference at the end of the month in Chicago. I'm going to show a preview there. And I've been doing a bunch of screenings around all over the place, actually. And it's been really, really gratifying to watch the film with an audience. The way I have it set up is that I'm kind of pitching it as Afterlife 101. So this is for people who may not be familiar with the near-death experience, or for people who maybe they know about the near-death experience, but they don't know much about the life review, or whatever. And people are really responding to it. I mean, it's really been an amazing experience to watch the film, and then after the film, I do a Q&A with the audience, and people are having spiritual awakenings sitting in the theater watching this, and it's just been very, very. It's been a truly wonderful experience for me personally. The other thing that happened was in the middle of all this, my younger brother passed away, completely unexpected. And it really threw my life and my family's life into turmoil. It was devastating. When I lost my dad in 2019, that was rough. But when I lost my brother in 2023, it just my whole world stopped. And again, as I say in the film, I never imagined I could feel so sad. And I was really kind of ready to give up on everything, including the film, because I just couldn't understand how a loving God, creator, whatever you want to call it, could allow such devastation. I mean, I was devastated when he died, and what happened was he was living in Florida in a condo complex with one of our sisters, and I had not seen him in a couple of years. We were not estranged or anything, but we weren't as close as we used to be. And so a couple of weeks before he passed, without knowing, I mean, he wasn't sick. I mean, he had some health issues, but there was nothing imminent like he was going to pass. I kind of invited myself down there. I went to visit him, spent a week with him and my sister and her kids, and it was great. There was a lot of healing. For me, I've been a student of A Course in Miracles for about 35 years now. And one of the key tenets of the Course is forgiveness. And, I really worked on that with him that week while I was there. And I came back to New Jersey, and 2 weeks later, he was dead. And it took me about 3 months. I went back to Florida. I was helping my sister with his estate. And it took it was about 6 weeks. And I came back here for a couple of weeks. And what happened was I came back to the material in the film. I started watching some of the interviews that I hadn't watched, or I started editing a little bit. And it was working on the film that helped me move through that grief. And it's really interesting because prior to his passing, I would say I was probably like 85% in on this idea that, that there is an afterlife and, life is eternal and we're spiritual beings, we're not human beings. But there was maybe a little doubt in there. And when he died, I recognized that, I really had to decide if I really believe this. Because as I said, I'm not an experiencer. I love the stories that I hear from the people who have these experiences. But so it was working on the film, talking to some people. Now he was a pretty firm non-believer in the afterlife. He was a really tough New Yorker. He as far as I know, at least, he didn't believe in anything other than what, we could feel and touch. And he was kind of a materialist, atheist. And after he passed, I was actually with a medium when my sister was trying to reach me to tell me what had happened. And my phone was on vibrate, and I was ignoring it. And the medium said, "You should really answer your phone. This is important." And then my sister told me what happened, and then the medium right there gave me a reading, and he came through. The first person that came through was my brother, you know. And I'm laughing now because the film is dedicated to him. And for somebody who thought all this stuff was BS, he's now a really important part of the film. He's come through several times now with other mediums. And guys, I honestly believe that his passing was part of our soul's journey together. You know, we had a soul contract, and because it was really what I needed to go all in now, and I can look anybody in the eye today and say, I'm 100%, I'm 110% believer in the afterlife, in, soul contracts, spirit guides, eternal life. And I guess it was really important for me to have that experience because here I am bringing a film to the world, I hope to the world, that is basically telling people there is no death. We're not our physical bodies. We're more than our bodies. We are these eternal spiritual beings who, by the way, we're divine. We're goodness. We're divinity. We're love. We're compassion. We're certainly worthy, and lovable. And we are enough. All the stuff that I've wrestled with most of my life, quite honestly. And so it all kind of came together in that moment. And now the film is moving forward, and people, as I said, people are watching it, and it's been an amazing experience. What I'd like to do is show, there's a 3-minute trailer, and then I can talk a little bit more about the film, the process, and then also take questions. So let me see if I could share my screen. Let me pull this up here. So hopefully you could see that. Let me just make sure the sound is on. All right, so let's put this here. Tell me if you can hear it.
I think this is the best thing going on anywhere, to be in human form incarnated on Earth at this time.
At the soul level, we decide in advance what characteristics, what personality traits, what challenges we want to take on.
The soul chooses who it's going to be born to, what family it will belong to.
And I've thought many times that I might be mandated to Earth. What did I do wrong? Why am I here again?
I felt the power of my soul, the part of me that has always lived and will never die.
I started to see this bright, bright light, this beautiful bright light directly above me. I was just being lifted up by love.
If you could imagine absolute love and absolute peace, that's all you felt in this energy.
That was one of the messages I was sent back with. Go back and tell them, life is eternal.
That realm is sharp, clear, detailed, meaningful, powerful, filled with emotional truth and depth.
When Nolan flatlined, what I experienced was Mary Fran coming across the veil, and she scooped Nolan up out of his physical body. And they had this exquisite reunion that you can only imagine between a mother and son.
And suddenly I could breathe fine. I was incredibly conscious. I was more alive than I've ever been.
For every 100 souls that qualifies to come down to Earth, and you've got to be an advanced soul to come down here, there's only one body.
I said, I'm home. I'm finally home. I said that over and over.
Time starts to slow down, almost collapse on itself. I began to surrender to the concept of dying.
Everything that was temporal or physical or mortal about that soul was drawn aside, and I saw who he was, and I was in the presence of the divine.
Every single person is this light walking around the center of their body, in the center of their energetic structure, in the center of their chakra system is the heart. It's the heart center. I also understood that was heaven, but this is heaven. If you want to be in heaven, you can just be there.
60 interviews, 38 questions, all in a groundbreaking documentary about the afterlife. Every soul knows the joy of remembering who we really are. All right, so that's a promo. I'm sorry if it was a little choppy. Zoom, that's a function of Zoom. It's normally plays really well. And so that gives you a little sense of the project, what it's about. Again, the name of the film is Every Soul Knows, The Joy of Remembering Who We Really Are. And the website is everysoulknows.com. If you go there, you can see, so there's a bunch of people in the film that you probably know, but there's also a bunch of people that you probably don't know. And it was important to me to give new people a chance to tell their story. You know, I wanted new people to have an opportunity to shine. And so you can find out, you can see the entire list of everybody that I interviewed on the website. But not only that, even though it's a 5-hour project when all is said and done, you know, most people are only going to get a few minutes on screen, but they all had something really important to share. So what I've done is I've made everybody's full interview available on the website and also on the film's YouTube channel, which is at Every Soul Knows. And most of those interviews run like 30 to 60 minutes, and they're available for free. There's no charge. There's no subscription. I even cut out the mid-roll ads on the YouTube video so you could watch them from beginning to end without interruption. And that was really important to me for two reasons. One, I wanted to give everybody a chance to have their voice heard, because a lot of them have something really important to share. And again, you know, with a few minutes on camera, you're not going to be able to tell your whole story. But the other thing is I wanted to create a resource library for the audience. So at the end of the film, I invite people to go to the website or to the YouTube channel to watch everybody's interview. And what's been great is people are binge watching these. There's 55 interviews now up there. People are binge watching, and every morning now I look in my inbox and people are commenting, and they're so grateful. They're so appreciative. You know, it's like a place to go. Again, this is for people who maybe are not that familiar with the near-death experience, with spiritually transformative experiences, with the idea of the afterlife. So it's a great resource for people to go to after they watch the film. And you know, I really wanted to give back to the audience, and also to make sure that everybody who honored me, a lot of these people traveled to my location that are in the film. They traveled to my location at their own expense to be part of this. So to honor the people who honored me, I'm making their full interviews available as well. I guess I could open it up for questions. Anybody have any questions or comments or?
That's really generous of you to have done that, to make it that available, and especially taking away those annoying ads.
Oh God, yeah.
Thank you for that. Questions, people?
What's the location for the full interviews?
So if you go, again, you go to the YouTube channel, which is at Every Soul Knows, or go to the website, which is everysoulknows.com, and there's a tab that says interviews. Just click on that. You could see everybody's bio. You could see, you know, links to their websites, and there's also a link to their video, their full interview.
Okay, I think Sandra had a hand up, and then we'll have Ann after that. Annie.
Have you talked to anybody about star seeds and Palladians and the other star seeds?
Sandra, that's my next movie.
I'm just now learning that.
Yeah, I've gone down that rabbit hole for the last few months.
So is it real? Is it a real deal?
You know, again, you got to decide for yourself, but I believe all of it. So
Yeah.
it's really resonating with me personally.
Okay, I was told that I was like a Palladian and that I wasn't from here. And so I've been told that by 4 different people. And so the people that I resonate with, I'm thinking they're the same thing, maybe not the same star seed, but they're still star seeds to begin with. So that's just my thought.
Well, so listen, there's so much information out there now. So, spend a weekend on YouTube and just, look up starseed and see what comes up. Obviously, you got to use some discernment and all that, but
Oh yeah.
I'll say this: I don't think any of us are from here. All of us are from another realm, another dimension. Many of us, I do believe, if you're really interested and resonate with the topic, I believe many of us have come here with a purpose to assist with this ascension, to assist with the awakening of humanity. And I do believe I don't have any specific memories myself of a particular. I mean, I seem to have some kind of an affinity with Atlantis. But I don't gaze at the night sky and say, oh, there's my home in the middle of the Pleiadian cluster. But I am resonating with the whole concept, and the whole topic. And the point is, I mean, I think for me at least, the point is, number one, and we do cover this in the film, this idea that we're here by our own voluntary choice, right? Nobody's here against their will. But not only that, we came with a purpose. So whether it's part of a starseeds, excuse me, Palladian starseed family, or whether we're just, coming back for our, 1000th lifetime here in the earth plane, we came to accomplish something. And the soul, my understanding is the soul usually chooses a plan, a mission, a purpose that is for its own benefit, but is also for the benefit of the soul group, the soul family, or, the entire planet. The soul is very interested in being of service. And so I believe, we come here with a purpose. And the invitation at the end of the film is, isn't it time we got on with it? Because most of us are so distracted by our lives that we never really find our purpose, And again, it doesn't have to be some grandiose, not everybody's here to save the world per se. I mean, your purpose might just be to be a great grandparent to a child who needs that kind of support. And maybe that child is going to do something great in the world, But I think the main message for me is whether you identify as a starseed or just a soul who's back here for whatever reason, the invitation I think for all of us is to start living intentionally, right? Have an intention as to the impact that you want to have, and hopefully that involves being of service to others in some way, uplifting whoever, people in your own neighborhood, people in your own family. I mean, I look at every encounter now as an opportunity for me to be of service in some way. To even if I spent the weekend last Sunday with my mom, and I've got a long history with her, obviously. Oh, by the way, let me finish this thought. So I spent the weekend with her, or the Sunday with her, and I was there just to be of service. How can I be of service to this person that I love? And it was great. Whereas in the past, I brought all my baggage, still working out my resentments and everything else with her. I don't do that anymore, and so it's a whole different relationship as a result. The one thing I want to tell you about my mom. So my mom has seen the film about 4 or 5 times now. And after the first time she watched it, she says, "Peter, I'm so proud of you. You're doing such a great job. It looks so professional. I know how hard you've been working on all this, right?"
Yeah.
But then she says, "But you have to understand, I think this is all a big fairy tale." She's not a believer in the afterlife, right? And at first I was a little like, I was watching it with my mom, one of my sisters, my niece, and another niece and nephew. And they kind of jumped on her right away to say, "Wait a sec, how could you not believe?" And I was like, "Guys, all right, relax." And it was like, it was okay for me to let her, again, because I say this at the beginning of the film, until we get there ourselves, none of us is really going to know anyway, right? So I kind of let her, and my mom is great, but if it's not in the New York Times, it ain't true. She's very materialist, very atheistic. She's a lot like my brother, actually. And so I was content to not, I didn't try to convince her. I wasn't trying to, I was just happy that she sat through it, quite honestly. And actually, the first time she watched it, she couldn't really watch it. It was very interesting. I was watching her and she kind of was looking away. I mean, she couldn't focus. It was very interesting. Well, about 3 weeks ago, it was July 4th weekend, she was here again in New Jersey, and she was with her two sisters, my two aunts, my cousin and my cousin's fiance. And so I showed them the film. And now my mother has been to a couple of other screenings in between. And when this ended at my cousin's, she was the first one. She sat up and she starts clapping, and she was so engaged. She couldn't admit that she really, she's a believer yet, but she had a whole different reaction to it. So I was like, oh, that was easy. I don't have to do anything, you know, and if she gets there, great. If not, and again, who knows? I mean, I don't, I believe, I know it's true for me. She may have another truth. And the one thing that I realized at a certain point with her, because I was kind of like that most of my life, I was kind of a believer. Actually, when I was younger, I don't think I was a believer at all because I was so angry at God. I really was angry at God. And so I couldn't even think about an afterlife or anything like that. And then I think at a certain point, it was also, I was afraid to believe, right? And I think that's might be where my mom is, afraid to believe because what if it's not true, right? What if we spend our whole life believing in something wonderful and it's not that? Or worse, what if it's what, a lot of people learn in through their religions and other things? What if it's not so great? So I'm okay, she's where she's at, and there are people in the audience who see the film. Not everybody's having spiritual awakenings. Some people just kind of walk out shaking their head. And I think most people are in the middle somewhere. And I do think if you look on YouTube, at least, if that's any indication, there is so much interest now in spiritually transformative experiences and the near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences, in this idea that that humanity is ascending, that there's this awakening that's happening. There are channels now, YouTube channels with millions of subscribers following this stuff. And 5 years ago, that wasn't the case. Certainly, 20 years ago, that wasn't the case. The other thing I'll say real quick is, the people that I interviewed, every one of them impressed me as genuine, caring people who just want to make the world a better place. Most of them are not getting rich off of this. And in fact, most of them are subjected, maybe not so much today, but in the past, they were subjected to all kinds of ridicule. They were debunked. They were trolled on social media. I mean, you really have to want to help humanity to get out there and tell a story like this. Again, at least, 10 or 15 years ago. A couple of the people I spoke to, their family is still not talking to them since they went public with this. So my point is there's still a stigma attached to that. And again, and one of the nice things so here was the deal. So the people that I invited to be part of the film, my deal was if you fly into Newark, not JFK, but Newark, I'll pick you up at the airport. I'll bring you to the location, which happens to be my living room. We'll do the interview. When it's over, if we have time, I'll take you out for dinner. If not, I'll take you back to the airport the same day so you don't have to stay overnight. And some of the best times were in the car ride back and forth to the airport, where I really got to spend time with these folks and get to know them a little bit better. And again, at least the people that I interviewed, every one of them seemed so genuine. They were so kind, and for me at least, they're doing it for the right reasons.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got 4 people who have questions. So it's Annie, Susan, Pam, and Lorraine, 4 people. So
I started off with one question and now I have 4 or 5.
can you make it just one right now and let everybody
just comments here. The first one was I caught Dave Bennett's picture when it flashed on the trailer, so I went on your website. Sure enough, Dave Bennett, who is an old friend of mine, about 30 years. So I'm glad to see he died like 3 times. So he's really a near-death experiencer. Um, but there was a couple things that you mentioned that kind of tweaked me a little bit. You were talking about the starseed thing. Have you ever heard of the people with O negative blood? Um, that blood type supposedly doesn't really exist. It isn't part of Earth people blood. If you haven't heard of it, look it up because it's kind of amazing. My girlfriend and I and my daughter all have O negative, and supposedly it's not from Earth. So that's a little
Yeah,
nugget.
I'm vaguely familiar with that, Annie. Thank you, but I'm not an expert on any of that. So
And I did have well, you mentioned people who had near-death experiencer, which is me, um, being of service to others. And that has been my whole life. I didn't know why until just fairly recently, the last 15, 20 years. But yeah. And I have a question too from your other near-death experiencers. And I know we have Course in Miracles people here. Just recently, I heard it phrased like the veil is actually the body. We've heard about the veil being over the veil, beyond the veil, whatever, for years. And just recently, though, I was hearing the veil is actually the body. Did you hear anything about that?
not specifically that. We do address this issue in the film of the veil of forgetting. So the veil of forgetting serves a really important purpose in this whole process. The course does mention the veil a little bit, and typically that's the notion that there's some kind of a barrier of a sorts between dimensions, between this realm and other realms. I didn't really focus on that so much. The course does talk a lot about the body versus the spirit and the mind. But what was interesting for me is this whole idea of the veil of forgetting. So maybe I'll just speak to that because I know that a little better. Would that be interesting or helpful?
Yes.
So one of the questions I ask in the film is, what is the veil of forgetting and why do we need it? And so the general consensus is this. When we're on the other side, there isn't the same contrast, polarity, duality that we have while we're on this side, right? On this side, we have obviously all the contrast, good and evil, love and fear, hot and cold. On the other side, there's really only light and love, at least at the higher dimensions. I know the lower astral is a little more like Earth, but the higher dimensions where many of the NDEers seem to end up before they come back, it lacks that contrast. And so the example that I use is it's the idea that in heaven, if you will, we read the book on how to ride the bicycle. In the earth plane, not only do we actually ride the bike, but we fall off the bike. And not only do we fall off the bike, but we scrape our knees. And not only do we fall off the bike and scrape our knees, but all our friends are laughing at us. And now, why is that significant? It's in that experience, and I believe, and this comes from back, reading Conversations with God 35 years ago. I believe we are here to experience, to know ourselves. The soul is here to know itself in its own experience. On the other side, it knows itself as light and love, but it can't really experience that because there's nothing really to contrast that. You get here, right? And this is a world filled with light, but it's also filled with darkness. It's filled with good, but it's also filled with evil. So in that moment, when I fall off the bike and scrape my knees and my friends are laughing at me, that's why I'm here. Because in that moment, I get to choose, right? So what's the choice? Course in Miracles says you're only capable of two emotions, love and fear, and every choice that we make reflects that. In that moment, when I fall off the bike and scrape my knees and my friends are laughing at me, I can either hate myself which is another way of saying I feel ashamed, I feel unworthy, I feel stupid, I feel not good enough. Or maybe I hate them, right? And attack them back and go beat them up or whatever you do as a 9-year-old kid who falls off his bike. Or maybe in that moment, I choose to love myself and say, all right, it was a mistake. I'm learning. I'm getting better at riding my bike. And my friends, I don't have to listen to them. Maybe I can love them. Maybe I could feel compassion for them, right? Those are the choice points that we experience in this physical plane that we don't get to have on the other side. Now, it may not seem much, falling off your bike and scraping your knees, but when you're married and you find out your spouse has been cheating with your best friend for the last 10 years, or you own a small business and the bookkeeper's embezzled all the money, all the pension fund out of your company. In that moment, guys, that's when we get to choose who we are. That's when we get to choose, am I love, light, forgiveness, compassion, or am I something else? So we're here for those moments. We're here for those experiences because that's how we get to know ourselves, who we really are in our own experience. Again, on the other side, and this is just my analogy, maybe other people see it differently, but this is the gift of this life experience and why we come here.
Well, okay. Susan Weber, where are you? There you are. You are next. Susan. There.
I'm sorry, I didn't have my hand up. Is it the other
I
Susan?
thought you did. No. Okay, then if not, then Pamela is next.
Thank you, though.
Okay. We have 2 Pams here tonight. You did have your hand up, right, Pam? Yes.
And Pamela did not.
The other Pam. Okay.
There you go.
So, okay. Well, I'll keep going down.
Oh, you know what? And let me finish my thought, actually. So the veil of forgetting, right? The veil of forgetting, we have to forget who we really are. We have to forget who and what we are, where we come from, to make this experience seem real, right? If we came here and we knew everything about the other side, if we knew everything about our past lives, it would be like knowing all the answers on the final exam, right? At first, it might be fun. Second time, it still might be fun. But eventually, what would happen is it would make that experience meaningless. There would be no purpose. There would be no point in it. So by forgetting who we are, we can remember who we are. And that's why the subtitle of the film is The Joy of Remembering Who We Really Are, because I personally believe we can't really experience joy in a meaningful way until we know who we really are, that we're more than these bodies, that life is eternal, that we're these divine spiritual beings created by love, as love, and for love. Before I forget, there's another website I want to point you guys to. It's called itstimetoremember.org. It's a nonprofit website that I set up that has the 7 key messages from the film. And it's one page. I'm not asking for donations. There's no subscriptions. All I want you to do is, if you resonate with those 7 messages, those 7 sentences you see there, find a way to share them with the world. And my dream is to be driving down a highway in the middle of nowhere someday and come upon a billboard on the side of the road that has those 7 messages on there.
That'd be great. Okay. Pam, did you want to say that? Or okay, she said in the chat that your analogies sure raised ghosties from my past life before birth. Okay.
And now that is from Pamela.
Yes. That's from you.
Yes.
All right. The next on the list was Lorraine and then Diane Jensen.
Oh, hi. Thanks, Sheila. Nice to see you.
You too.
Hi, Peter. Nice to meet you. I turn on my Zoom and you're talking about A Course in Miracles, and I'm like, oh my God, somebody knows A Course in Miracles, and everybody replied, we all know. And I mean, if I'm in a conversation and I bring up A Course in Miracles, it's usually a glazed over face on, in 99% of my experience. But anyway, that just brought so many weird coincidences. And you're going to have your um meet meeting convention you're going to in Oak Brook, Illinois, which is where I'm from, which is weird, and which is this little town outside of Chicago. And then the way I got to A Course in Miracles is bizarre. And Sheila and I have a similar experience where we lost somebody very close. And before then, I was a scientist. I was like, if I don't have proof, there's nothing. And then I lost my really sister that I was really close with, and then it was everything. It was like there was no way to unsee there was something else. So but for me, A Course in Miracles is kind of like reading the Bible. It's really hard to digest. So um, I was curious if you ever heard of Gary Renard, because I used to be the CFO of National Lampoon, that movie company, and there was this wonderful woman, Cindy, I'm blanking on her last name, and she was just kind of well, she's Cindy Renard now, but she was just our front desk girl. And but I just loved her energy, and so to always just kind of like come in and chat with her. And I had just been talking to my masseuse slash volleyball friend, and she was, I was just kind of talking about, I don't know, maybe my sister, and she brought up A Course in Miracles. And so I was just chatting with Cindy, and I was like, oh, my girlfriend was just talking about A Course in Miracles. And so Cindy said, my fiance is the foremost authority in A Course in Miracles, and he wrote that book, The Disappearance of the Universe. So when I read that, it just, like you were saying earlier, that not everybody uh, can believe it necessarily. But to me, once I read it, I couldn't unsee it. It was like, that was it. It was over. So that was my experience. So I was just curious if anybody else had read just The Disappearance of the Universe, which is, forgive the path to enlightenment, like Buddha, the path to enlightenment. No, don't judge, don't judge. But Jesus, the path to enlightenment is faster by forgive, 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 because you're forgiving yourself. And so I just have kind of lived by that, you know, roughly. But I was just curious if anybody else had read any of the Gary Renard.
Yeah, I recommend Gary's books. If somebody's new, I recommend Gary's books.
Yeah,
It's a great way
very
into the
easy
course.
to, exactly, very
Yeah,
easy.
it's a great way in. He's written 4 books actually. So
Mhm.
he's got Disappearance of the Universe. He's got Love Has Forgotten No One. He's got Your Immortal Reality. And his most recent book, although it's a couple of years now, is The Lifetimes When Jesus and Buddha Knew Each Other. So yeah, Gary and Cindy are great. There are a bunch of people out there who are helping people understand the course. It really, it's a self-study. It was written as kind of a self-study thing, but there are 3 groups that I belong to. I used to have my own study group that I led for many years. Now I participate. There's a bunch of online Foundation for Inner Peace, which was the original publisher. They have study groups. So there's a lot out there on the course. And I go through the course, I study it every day, and I go through the course cover to cover probably 3 or 4 times a year for the last 30 years. So I'm pretty familiar with it. Changed my life.
Sounds like it's worth looking into for those who haven't looked. Okay, Diane. And then Dave, did you have a hand up? You're muted, but let's Diane go. And then if you had your hand up, you'll go next.
Okay, I have one question and one comment. I grew up in Upper Montclair, New Jersey, and it looks like a lot of your. Did you take a bunch of photographs or something from that area?
So, yeah, from East Orange, from the Eagle Rock
Yeah,
Reservation.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know it. I know it well.
Part of my journey has been through photography, and one of the areas for me is fine art photography, which involves a lot of cityscapes. So being so close to New York, I photographed New York City.
Mhm.
And Eagle Rock is great because we catch the moon. I catch the full moon coming up behind the city. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a really, really beautiful place to grow up. Um, my question about your subject tonight is, you've interviewed quite a few people. Um, did they all say pretty much the same thing about the other side, about what it's like, what happens over there, or is everybody's story different?
So everybody's story is different, but the same. So I'll tell you what I mean by that. So everybody seems to have a unique experience on the other side in the sense that it seems to be tailored for them. What resonates with them, what they need from the experience, basically to wake up. A lot of people who have near-death experiences say, I was not on track with my life, and then I had this experience, and suddenly now I'm on track. I realize why I'm here. There seem to be common elements to the experience, and when I speak to lay people about it, I typically focus on three or four of the main elements that seem to be the same. The first is the separation from the body. So I'm sure you guys have all heard about, the car accident or in the hospital room, the patient or the person leaves their body and they see the accident scene or the hospital room or whatever it is from a third person perspective, right? And I did a great interview with a guy named Tony Sikoria. Tony is a surgeon and a doctor. He got hit by lightning in 1994, and I was just actually editing his segment tonight. He has the most amazing description of leaving the body, and so it's this comes with this recognition that, oh, that's not who I am. In some cases, they don't even recognize the body. They're like, oh, that poor person on that hospital bed or in that car accident. They don't even recognize that that's who they were in this life.
Wow.
So there is this idea of separating from the body, recognizing that we're not our bodies. By the way, that's one of the main themes of A Course in Miracles. The next element is many of them leave that environment and they end up in a place of, some describe it as a tunnel, some describe it as a black void. It's some area where there's an overwhelming sense of peace and unconditional love. So a lot of them say, I had no idea where I was, but I never felt more loved in my life. I never felt more peaceful, right? And so there's this experience of a piece of unconditional love. At that point, some of them meet up with a spirit guide, or they meet up with a loved one that passed before them, or they may meet up with a religious figure, and they may travel then into the light, right? This is the light that everybody talks about. And they come through that light, and some of them are in a place of, it looks like a garden, or it's a childhood, it's seen from their childhood, or it's a place they don't really recognize. But again, they have this feeling of being enveloped in love and peace. And the other element then, so there's separation from the body, there's this sense of love, and they talk about a love that you can't really describe with words. And it's not even I felt loved, it's I was love.
Yeah.
I'm an experience of love. Now, why is that important? Well, many of us, myself included, I talk about the disease of unworthiness. Most of my life, I felt not good enough. I felt unlovable. I felt ashamed, and that really created a life that was very difficult to have intimacy in my relationships. It was difficult for me to have any kind of a success in my life because I never felt I deserved it. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to make a quick plug for my book, Be Bigger Than You Think You Are, Overcoming Our Self-Imposed Limits to Have the Life We Want. I actually talk about how I overcame that disease of unworthiness, how I transcended that and went from somebody who really didn't like himself very much to somebody who has I feel I have a healthy, loving, caring, supportive relationship with myself and by extension others. So it's all in that book. And so this sense that we are love, which means if we are love, it means we are inherently worthy. We are good enough. There's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing to feel bad about ourselves, and all of that. And so they describe it as a love beyond words, right? And they're enveloped in this love, and then the sense of peace. And then the other element is a sense of oneness, unity consciousness, oneness. And many of them describe very vividly how they I don't know if you guys know Anita Morjani. Anita's in the film. She says, I didn't know where my soul ended and another soul began. I felt one with everyone and everything. And most of them described some kind of an experience of that oneness. Doesn't mean we're all the same, but it means we're all connected. We have this unity. Now, why is this important? So when I talk to people, I say, one of the reasons I did this film is I want to take what we know about life on the other side and use that to make our lives better while we still think we're here in these bodies. So imagine if we began to live as if we were not our bodies, or let's put it this way, that we were more than our bodies. All right? Doesn't say we deny the body, doesn't say we deny the world, right? But we understand that there's something else, there's something greater, there's something more, right? That takes away a lot of the fear of dying, because I think one of the number one fears for most of us is death. And so it kind of changes our perspective, because right now, if who we are these physical bodies that have a limited lifespan, that have to fight with other bodies over resources, the world kind of makes sense. Not very pretty. In fact, it's friggin' miserable for most of us at certain points in our lives. It's not a happy place, but it makes sense. But what if that's not who we are, guys? What if we're not these bodies? What if we're more than that? And what if when the body dies, we continue? A lot of them say, I didn't even know I was dead. Tony, again, this guy, Tony Sikoria, you could watch his interviews on YouTube. He says, it was seamless. He said, I didn't even know I was dead. He said, I thought there'd be when you die, he said, I thought there'd be bells and whistles that would at least tell you that you were dead. So it's this continuation of consciousness, right? So if we began to live that way, and then if we began to live from this place of we are good enough, we are worthy, we are love, we're not evil, we do evil things, but only because we've forgotten who we are. Right? What if we began to live from this place of seeing the divinity in each of us? See it in myself and I see it in others. Right? That place of love, unconditional love, compassion, acceptance. It doesn't mean so the longest chapter in my book, Be Bigger Than You Think You Are, is on forgiveness, right? And the longest section in forgiveness is healthy boundaries. Right? So just because we're not our bodies, right? And just because we're all compassionate, loving beings, it doesn't mean we don't have to have boundaries in this life. And in fact, it's very difficult to forgive if you don't have healthy boundaries. But I digress. And then what if we all live from this place of unity consciousness? We're not the same, but we're all connected, which means what I do for you, I'm actually doing for myself. And by the way, what I failed to do for you, I failed to do for myself. Just those three things. Imagine if we started living our lives from that place instead of where many of us are now. It would change everything. And honestly, guys, until we change who we think we are and how we see ourselves and how we see others, not much is going to change in this world, I believe. So I want to take that. I want to take what we can learn from the near-death experience. Sometimes it's just an out-of-body experience. Sometimes it's some other spiritually transformative experience. Let's take that. And a lot of them, so as I said, Diane, none of them are exactly the same, but they all seem to have these common elements. And here's the biggest thing. So again, I love my mom. My mom, she still sends me articles from the New York Times by mail. She'll clip out an article from the New York Times and she mails it to me, right? So she found out I'm doing this film on near-death experiences, and I opened my mailbox one day, and there's a letter from my mom, and it's got an article from the Sunday Times about the fact that most near-death experiences are hallucinations. It's the endorphins, it's the chemicals of the dying mind, right? So when I started, I didn't even read the whole article. I just had to read the headline. I knew what it was, right? So I talked to her again, and I thanked her. I said, Mom, thank you for thinking of me. I love that you're interested in what I'm interested in. You're trying to help. Thank you so much. And I said, but here's my experience with this. I said, there's one thing that's really impressed me about the people that I've met. And I said, look, in some cases that actually may be what it is. I don't know. But the people that I've met, the thing that really impressed me is they seem to be different people after the experience. This seems to have changed their life. Many of them go from being, typical average people to being really interested in helping others, being of service to others, being a positive force in people's lives, uplifting people. And I said, Ma, I don't think a hallucination does that. I don't think a hallucination is going to have somebody stop working on Wall Street and go work in hospice. I don't think, and again, we're not going to know until we get there ourselves. And so, again, for me at least, look at the person for who they are, decide for yourself. But what would be so bad if we just started treating each other as if we were all connected, as if we were all part of one greater whole, as if we are really divine beings, that we're human beings, we're spiritual beings having a human experience, as they say, and so we do some really fucked up things, pardon my French, because we've forgotten who we are, and many of the star seeds and other souls that are here are traumatized by this experience. This is and I'm just starting to get into some of the really dark, the human trafficking stuff. This is a dark, if 1/10 of that is true, this is a really dark place. So it's not to say that it's not to deny that. I'm not saying deny the world. I'm not saying deny the evil in the world. And yet, and this is just my opinion, we can't know without the darkness, we can't know ourselves as light. And the more darkness there is, guys, the more we know ourselves, we can experience ourselves as light. So there's some purpose in that, not to condone any of that stuff, and yet to understand that there's purpose behind all of this. None of this is random. We have soul plans, we have soul families, we have soul groups that we're part of. One of the things we cover in the film is the people who agitate you the most are probably the ones who love you the most on the other side. And there's a whole discussion behind that, and so I've really had to embrace that. I've chosen to embrace that. And it's really helped because now I look at that relationship so much differently. Instead of them being an adversary who's a thorn in my side, who I just want to obliterate from my life, now it's like, oh, wait a second. They're my soulmate. I asked them to come into this experience with me, and we agreed to have this little dance that we're doing. And again, once you get to the other side, I'm told those are the people you embrace first. Those are the people you love the most, right? That said, there's a lot of horrific stuff that happens in certain relationships and certain situations. And I say in the film, this doesn't condone an abusive, harmful relationship. We're not condoning any of that. We're not excusing any of that. Oh, and the other thing that's really important, guys, is to understand that the human consciousness that thinks it's Peter or whoever is not the consciousness that chose those situations, that chose those relationships to play out in that way. The human consciousness did not choose to have that parent as a drug addict or an abuser or whatever. The consciousness that chose that is the higher self. It's the soul. It's the part of us that's connected to all that is, who sees the big picture, who knows all the timelines, who knows all the lifetimes that we've had together, and who knows, most importantly, that nothing, and Mary Helen Hensley, some of you may know her, she says this in the film, nothing that seems to happen in this life is any kind of a permanent loss, damage, injury to who we really are, to the soul. And in fact, those challenges that we experience expand if we take advantage of them, right? And move through that process, expand our soul. We become more loving. We become more soulful. We become more, and so there is a gift in that experience. So we're not condoning any harmful or abusive behavior, and we're not shaming the victim. We're not saying, "Oh, you chose to have that parent." No, not what it's about, ever. And you know what? As somebody who suffered in this lifetime, my heart goes out to anybody who's suffering. I have so much compassion now, especially after losing my brother and some of the other things that have happened in my life. I have nothing but compassion. I would never point and say, "You chose that. That's your soul plan." No, right? And maybe there is a gift in that experience for us. Maybe there is something that we take away from those experiences that helps all of us. And if we're talking about ascension, if we're talking about evolution, if we're talking about becoming more, it's the challenges, it's the darkness, that gives us the opportunity to ascend. I believe.
I believe that too, and I thank you very much.
Yes. We're at the end of our time, but I see we have one last question if you're willing to hang out for a few more minutes and answer it. Is that okay, Peter?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm in. I'm here.
And by the way, everybody, I put a link to his book in the chat. So I'm sure we'll all be going to get it. Linda, go ahead.
Did you say Linda?
Yeah. You're the last question.
Yes. It's not really a question. I just want to thank Peter for all the insight and wonderful information. But I had this synchronicity when I was in meditation yesterday morning. I woke up to this song in my head that went something like, "Everyone needs to know that we're here to remember what we were meant to remember." And it was a tune, and it just kept repeating. And then finally, I'm like, I know that I'm here to remember what I was meant to remember. And then I saw Sheila's email about tomorrow, today. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that's just like my song. So I thought that was pretty fascinating.
Yeah, that seems to be, for me at least, that seems to be what it's all about, is that remembering.
Yeah.
And again, Neil Donald Walsh, if you haven't read Conversations with God, actually there's a whole series. He was one of the first people, for me at least, that put that idea forth to say, we're remembering, but we're also deciding who we are. Course in Miracles says to teach is to demonstrate. And we're always demonstrating what thought system we believe, right? Do we believe a thought system that's based in fear, attack, condemnation, judgment, separation? Or do we believe do we have a mindset, a thought system that's based in love and compassion, and understanding and brotherly love and all that stuff, and it's through making those choices that we're demonstrating who we think we are. And for me, at least, it's part of this awakening is the remembering, which is literally to remember. He says it this way, to become once again a member of the body of God. Now, some people say, well, if we're all love and light and we're already evolved as a spirit, why do we come here? Why do we have this experience, right? And again, for me at least, and you got to decide for yourself, but for me, the answer is we choose to come here. We don't have to do anything. But you got to remember, guys, eternity is a really long time, right? And unconditional love, one of the people in the film says this, you know, at a certain point, it might become kind of boring if it's all love and light and unconditional, and it's just all, you know. So it's like we come here for the contrast and we by choice, and we don't have to do anything. But this is like, you know, why does somebody climb Mount Everest? Why does somebody go on vacation? My sister and her kids, they just came back from the Caribbean, Turks and Caicos, and the kids, they're 11 years old, you know, and they were so excited. There was a water park and they got to snorkel and see all the fish, you know, and it was like they were there for the experience. Well, maybe that's why we're here, you know, and it can be a vacation like Turks and Caicos, or it could be, you know, it could be hell. It could be, you know, it's whatever we decide, whatever we make of it, you know, and that's why the Course in Miracles has been very helpful for me, because I can see one of my lessons in this lifetime is forgiveness. I actually did a TEDx talk a couple of years ago on forgiveness, and that seems to be a recurring theme in my life. Now, we don't have time to get into it, but the way the Course in Miracles talks about forgiveness is a little different than I think most people think about forgiveness. But we do cover it in the film. Oh, so here's the other thing. So I said at the beginning, I can tell you if you guys want to watch the movie tonight, you can watch it. So go to the website, everysoulknows.com, and just click on the watch link at the top. And it's a $3.99 rental for 72 hours. And if you don't love it, I'll send you your $3.99 back, money back guarantee. If you don't have the $3.99, just send me an email and I'll make sure that you get to see it. And you can watch it tonight. And one of the most moving, when I watch the film with an audience, one of the most moving sections is with Jeff Olson. Some of you may know Jeff's story. Many years ago, when Jeff was newly married, he had a seven-year-old son and a 14-month-old son, and he and his wife were visiting his in-laws, and on the way back, he fell asleep and wrecked the car, and his wife and his youngest son died in the accident. And one of the questions in the film is, how do you define forgiveness? So I have a bunch of people talk about how they define forgiveness, and then we get to Jeff's story. Now, here's the thing. Here was a challenge for me. Jeff, you know, millions of people know Jeff's story. They've read his book. Excellent book, by the way. And so I needed to find a different way to approach his story. And I realized right away, I thought, my God, how could you live with yourself? You know, you wreck the car, you know, and kill your wife and youngest child die. So when I met up with Jeff, I said, look, you can tell your story however you want to tell it, but I said, what I'm really interested in is, how did you forgive yourself for that? And that's the interview in the film. You'll see it if you watch the film. We focus on that, his journey. And he said it took him years. It took him so, you know, he was so filled with regret, and he was in so much grief. And it's beautiful the way he tells it, you know, and he actually had a spiritually transformative experience in the hospital where he found out that he was forgiven by Source, God, Creator, whatever you want to call it. And he said that changed everything for him. So forgiveness is really important in my life, and I know for a lot of people. A Course in Miracles is great for that. My book is great for that, I feel. And there's a great section in the film on that, among other things. Right now, the preview, I'm calling it a preview because it's 2 hours, a little over 2 hours. And I'm kind of changing it up. So what you see, if you do rent the online version, what you see is, I actually showed, it's a version I showed. So I took the film on the road earlier this year. I drove from Connecticut down to Atlanta, stopping along the way. We did a bunch of screenings. So what you see if you rent it online is the version that I showed in Atlanta. And a lot of great stuff in that. I'm still kind of playing around with the edit and all of that, but and if you come back in a few months, it might be different. Eventually, when I finally finish the film, it's been really important for me so I'm financing the entire film myself. In fact, it's all I've been doing for the last 2.5 years. And it was really important to me because I worked in Hollywood for 20 years as an entertainment attorney. And I knew that if I took it to one of the studios or if I took it to the streaming services, they would want to make it into something else, right? And it was really important to me that it was a positive, uplifting, empowering. I didn't want to scare anybody with the near-death experience. I didn't want anybody to feel guilty about the choices that they've made. So I knew I had to do it myself, and I'm doing everything. I'm the cinematographer. I do the editing, all the lighting. I arrange all the interviews. I'm doing all, as I said, the editing. I even did the backgrounds. You'll see there's a lot of cool backgrounds. The mandalas I did. And I found a kid, he's 20 years old in music school in Wisconsin, third year of music school, and I hired him to do the score. And this kid is brilliant. He's amazing, and I don't think he didn't even know what a near-death experience was when I first approached him. Now he's an expert. And I wanted to give him a chance to shine. I had this big composer from Hollywood wanted to do it, and not that guy's not talented, but I really I wanted to give new people a chance to shine in this film. So eventually, I hope it will be available on places like Netflix, although it wouldn't be exclusive. I don't want people to have to subscribe to Amazon or subscribe to Netflix to see it. I want it to be widely available where people can see it. I want to make my money back, but I trust that that's going to happen. I'm not worried about that. So it's more important to me that people who really want to see it and will benefit from it have a chance to see it. I've been doing screenings at Unity churches. The Unity churches, I'm actually going to be in Kansas City. It looks like I'm not going to be there, but the film will be there August 23rd. If you're in Missouri, Kansas City area, it's going to be shown live there. And Unity churches have been great. They're very open-minded. They really enjoy the subject matter. So people are seeing it, and if you can't make it to a screening, it is available online.
Have you connected with Stephen Berkeley, Life with Ghosts?
No.
You'd be a good guest on their podcast. Well, because he did a documentary called Life with Ghosts.
Right. I'm
Yeah.
vaguely familiar. I didn't see it though.
Yeah. We need to connect you.
Yeah, I'm doing all kinds of media, podcasts, You have a podcast, you want me on it?
I just referred you to somebody today. So you'll be hearing from
Ina, right?
her. Ina. Yeah. Oh, you already heard her. Yeah. Cool. Oh, thank you so much. This has just been amazing. I know everybody is talking about how good, how much we appreciate the time that you've given us. And it'll spread, we'll go viral.
That's the thing, guys. If